So we appreciate your diligence and your leadership in joining us today, and we welcome Curtis. Greatly appreciate your leadership. As
For sure.
always, we begin all things by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and tell us about your remarkable work.
Yeah. Oh no. Blessings, blessings. Always good to be here. Yeah, I'll tell you a bit more about the work I do. My name is Curtis, but everyone calls me CC. I like to go by my nickname. I grew up in Scarborough, of course, Cataraqui, and my background is I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Shuri and Source Code Academy. They're both one and the same. Source Code is a nonprofit, and basically they focus on closing achievement gaps in marginalized communities based on data-driven instruction. So if kids can't read and write at grade level, the goal is to support them so they can get back up to grade level. Out of that work, we realized we faced a lot of barriers. So we ended up starting a technology company out of that nonprofit because we couldn't find a technology to help our work.
Yeah.
So the Shuri is basically it's a tool that consolidates 100 data silos that schools have, and then we consolidate in one single source of truth. And then every teacher knows what's working, what's not working every week.
Yeah.
So they're able to make data-driven instructions to get the students caught up to grade level. The exciting part about the work that we do is before our work, we're starting to realize teachers don't look at the data until report cards.
Yeah.
So we're driving early intervention rather than delayed intervention. My priority of the work I do is in high underserved communities. So any low-income community that has a hood, those are where we build the technology and run programs. So that's what I do on the for-profit side and the nonprofit side. And then outside of that, I do a lot of work in the community.
That's remarkable. That's very remarkable. You were talking about barriers. What challenges and barriers do you face in your work, and how are you and your team working to overcome them?
Yeah, there's a few. I think when you're building in either charity or nonprofit or even for profit, less than 1% of all funding in the venture capital space for profits go to Black founders, and it's similar for charities and nonprofits. So we're kind of playing in a field where the capital is very hard to get. But then even once you get the capital, which is another barrier in itself,
Yeah.
sometimes you're building in a certain space where the people you're working with need to understand what you're doing, but also it's very hard if they haven't built something before,
Yeah.
right? So on the Shuri side, essentially we actually had to separate it from the nonprofit because we realized we need capital to grow it, and the nonprofit didn't have funding to sustain that. So we got funding from a venture capital fund called Antler, and those founders who funded us have built startups before. So their support was able to get through all the barriers that we face as founders.
Yeah.
And then on the nonprofit side, my friend oversees the organization. I'm board chair now. We've noticed there's a lot of barriers because our timeline doesn't always work with measurable outcomes. So if you start work and you realize there's so much things going on in the community, loss of life of a young person, a family member getting taken by CAS, kids are struggling with food insecurity. We're an education program, but there's holistic things happening that impact the work. So
Yeah.
you can't get the measurable outcomes to deliver to the funders in that space, right? So I start to see the biggest barriers is patient capital is hard because we understand measurable outcomes is a big goal for all organizations, but also there's this growing pain with the actual needs of the community. Can't run an education program if kids are struggling to eat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to somehow find a way to partner with the organization that provides the food support so you can continue the work. Part of that, I think, on the nonprofit side, the biggest barrier is just trying to figure out things that haven't been tested before, right? We haven't had a program, especially in Canada, that starts a nonprofit that's also trying to get into the tech space,
Yeah.
right? It's a very different space where you're trying to build both a software and hardware solution to close achievement gaps for kids in the hood, right? So I think that's been a bit of a challenge, just finding the right partners for that project. But I think it's been exciting because we met some great partners. We have been able to partner with North Pine Foundation on our nonprofit. They gave us a lot of like hope and faith in the beginning of the process. And then us as an organization, which is cool, a lot of our team now is becoming more for-profit focused.
Yeah.
Let's build internal systems so we make our own money so we don't have to rely on capital. Therefore, our timeline's our timeline, right? So that's the space we've been going through in the last 6 months is the team just, everyone, regardless if you're nonprofit, for-profit, build sustainable systems to fund ourselves so then we can set the goals and the timeline. And if the community needs help in a certain way, we can just make the decision.
Yeah.
We don't have to report to anyone on that. So that's the biggest challenge I find as well. One thing I'll highlight briefly, which is separate from the project, it's very hard in a space as a founder. I'm a software engineer as well. When I had to connect with a partner of mine, and we had a good chat about what we were building, and I started to realize everyone has advice, which is great, but then you as a founder have to see where the advice is coming from, right? So for me, when I talked to another founder who sold 3 companies, he had a climate tech company, sold for 6 figures, and then started another climate tech company, sold for 9 figures. Like these are entrepreneurs who've scaled companies that are doing good for the planet. When they give advice, they've gone through what I've gone through.
Yeah.
So I can take what they're saying because they know exactly what I'm going through.
Yeah.
But when you talk to other people, they're like, "Oh, you should do this." I'm like, I just drove to 150 schools in person in the last 3 weeks to
Mm-hmm.
talk to principals one-on-one because they're stressed with emails.
Mm-hmm.
So they just need to see people in person.
Yeah.
I don't know if many founders are going to wake up every day and drive to a school in the hood, chop it up with the OGs in every block to check in, and then go do your work and then go back home, right? You have to be a certain kind of mentality to do that work. So
It
I
takes
think
dedication, definitely.
it's very challenging. Yeah.
And what inspired you to do this work?
Um, to be honest, I think a couple things. When I was in the States, a lot of my family's in Brooklyn and in LA, and it seems like a lot of the entrepreneurs that are very successful, they invest the money back into the neighborhood, buy buildings, invest in other startups that are coming up out of the neighborhood. And I was already in the tech space, but I always wanted to solve a problem that meant a lot to me. And I grew up teaching in model schools, so I taught in the hood where I grew up. So I'm very fortunate. And then when I left, I ended up becoming an instructional coach. So I was teaching teachers how to teach effectively for the future of work. So a lot of focus on data literacy and data driven instruction. And I've been everywhere: Canada, US, Brazil, public, private, charter schools. So I have a lot of experience. Did some work with Apple and Microsoft as well. And when I came back, I'm like, I have all the skill sets. I'm a software engineer. Um, I've done sales because I grew up in the streets. So I have experience in sales and supply chain management and product development. And I'm like, you know what? I understand the community better than anyone else because I've taught in places like the favelas. I've been in places in the Bronx, in Brooklyn. I've been in South Central. I've been in a lot of areas that are very interesting. So when I came back, I looked at high priority schools, high needs communities, and a lot of the underserved communities never had tech built for our community. So I'm like, how about we build a culture responsive AI platform that can consolidate all data and enable teachers to close achievement gaps with data driven instruction? It was simple to me in my head. So then hired a guy. He leads most of the stuff right now while I focus on product and working with teachers. But my co-founder, his name is Dr. Amin Gebi, and he used to be a VP of AI and engineering at a big cloud infrastructure company in Iran. So he came here, got a PhD in algorithms, and ended up building AI models. And so we're kind of focusing on building our own culture responsive AI model that could support underserved communities. And it's been fun. It's been challenging, but what keeps me going is we're actually getting on the right track where hundreds and hundreds of teachers just in Toronto have reached out, and now we're working with eight school boards across the province on serving those underserved communities. So it's very exciting work.
That is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And do you have any set of key priorities in your work right now?
Key priorities. So it's tricky. Yeah, I think key priorities is 2 things. I think on the Shuri side, so the tech side, it's the source code side is the nonprofit side. Shuri is the for-profit side. So I think what we've been doing is we've been finding creative ways for both companies to generate their own revenue and fund our own initiatives. So those are kind of the key priorities right now. I think we're 3 months out from fully funding both entities ourselves. So profitable on one side, and the other one will have a operating budget that funds itself. So it doesn't really need to rely on outside capital.
Yeah.
So that's the main priority. And then I think the cool part of both entities is one is on the tech side and one is on the school support side. So having a team that can oversee the nonprofit that does that, and I'm able to just focus on the tech side, it's a good balance on supporting both the students in school and then the students in the community at the same time.
Thank you. And what is your ultimate goal and what does success look like to you and your colleagues?
Yeah, interesting. So to be honest, my ultimate goal is unrelated to what I do, but it's connected. So I think the ultimate goal is to close achievement gaps for every hood in the world. That's kind of like the mindset of the tech company. Is like go into any community, co-create a local solution for that community, close achievement gaps, and allow all those young people to participate in the future of work. So that's the tech side. The nonprofit has the exact same mission. They just work on a school-based program, so they're more people in person. But all these are leading towards something else that's a bit unrelated. So a lot of our organizations, um, we ended up partnering with 50 other community organizations to kind of bring together a social infrastructure project for Scarborough. It's been in the works for 10 years. The long-term goal is, what if our entire community, whether you're an entrepreneur, a creative, a working professional, or young person, you can come to a building, get meals, work out, have a mental health coach, have a career coach, and then there's on-site incubators and accelerators for you. There's skills training services for you. So you need to get upskilled to get placed in jobs. There's a place for you to get jobs. If you need to do things like event space, if you need to go to a maker space and crew around in the makerspace lab or the STEM lab, like we wanted to create a playground where you can have an innovation and entrepreneurship hub that's community owned and operated in your ends, and it's accessible and affordable for members to benefit from, rather than us relying on downtown. Currently, 90% of the innovation hubs are downtown. So that doesn't make sense if Scarborough's a fourth of the city, right? So we're already boxed out from innovation. So when you look at the economic reality of how much we're earning per individual in Scarborough, we're one of the most underserved boroughs in the city. So that's kind of like the bigger goal is for a lot of entities like us who are doing good work, might be on the software or the hardware side or the program side. We need to actually start focusing on infrastructure. That's the only way to future proof our organizations, because of the way gentrification happens, you get displaced. I'm originally from Regent, but we grew up in Scarborough. And when you look at my neighborhood, half our community is from Regent. And people are like, oh, why is that? Well, if you look at how gentrification and displacement works, it displaces Black and brown communities into other areas further from when they originated. So we have a lot of people in my community in Scarborough who are from Finch, some people from Jungle, there's some people from like what a Bleecker, like random areas that you're like, these are all not Scarborough areas.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the reality is we need to figure out ways to own buildings. So if gentrification does happen in the community, by us owning property, we're still able to retain the community fabric that was existing before gentrification happened. And therefore that model should be scaled. We should have every hood, like Nipsey says, should have an innovation and entrepreneurship hub.
Yeah.
A place for people to get jobs, get work, get funding for their businesses. And then out of that, you may have entrepreneurs be like, I have enough money, I'm going to start a housing development. I have enough money, I'm going to start my own VC fund. I have enough money, I'm going to start a climate tech organization. Like we need to have a space for all of us to gather, because right now, if you're an entrepreneur, pretty isolating in Scarborough and just in Canada in general.
And what does success look like to you?
Success. Who? Um, Success is interesting. I think for me, I always grew up. My dad passed a couple years back, and I remember we used to always chat about how his view of legacy impacted my view of legacy, and that's how I see success. And it's always been, I don't want to be remembered, but I want to co-create and co-build something with the community that is remembered. So I think I've always been on the mentality of like always trying to stretch towards something that hasn't been done before. I haven't really been in areas in Canada where you see local people from the hood bring a whole bunch of people together and start to see if they can co-build something that can get community land trust, which means indefinitely the building will stay in the community in perpetuity. You know, like I never had that kind of success before. So I think as I grew up with my dad, he just always said like, yeah, the accolades, about to go into CFL, I got injured, I rode across to Canada, I came up with the world's first augmented reality memoir. Like I don't care about those things. Those things are nice, don't get me wrong, but I've always been focusing on what are you doing for the community, not what are you doing for the brand.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what my main focus is. Success is continue to do what we're doing, try to build local solutions that the community owns and operates. And then from there, see if we can make the next step to start, franchising community land trust. I remember I talked to old boy about that. That would be so crazy if you could see a McDonald's model, but a social purpose organization owns real estate all around every hood. And then we see local community, doesn't matter where you are, pop the trunk, start a company, get funded from your own people, right? Different.
That is definitely the vision. That is definitely the vision. Yeah. Do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action?
A bit separate. I think Canadians need to stop funding just program. And I'll give you an example. Funding program is great, but when I'm in the States in Brooklyn, where my family's from, has some family in South Central as well. They have a lot of people who fund infrastructure, a lot of people who fund startups, and a lot of people who fund program. And I find like when I'm down there, it's like it's normal for people to have an idea to be like, yo, let's buy that building, turn it into an innovation hub for the community owned and operated. That's normal conversation. Over here, what's more normal is program funding, which is nothing wrong with that. Program funding helped us get to where we are. But long term, program funding is not going to get us to the place where we start owning infrastructure for social purpose reasons. So I think the big call to action, I think, for a lot of people is just trying to look at ways people who fund program, people who fund capital projects, so capital grants for buildings, and then people who fund strategy. We need to all be sitting at the same table so we can collab on an opportunity to bring more social purpose infrastructure to light. Because what we're seeing right now is the city's up for sale, and the only people who have capital right now are developers. So developers are just going to buy up the whole city unless there's a strategy from community-based organizations to be like, okay, we have to do something beyond program because we might run out of space where a program can operate now. You know what I mean? Because now those are going to be way below or way above market rate, for instance. So that's one option. I think another call to action would be just on the tech side. I think you have people from underserved communities that I've been meeting that have 6-7 figure companies, sometimes 8 figure companies, and are struggling to raise capital. But then you have someone from a not an underserved community, has no revenue, has a pitch deck, and can raise capital. So you're starting to see the discrepancy. It's like it doesn't matter if you're successful and you're hitting all the profitability markers as an entrepreneur. It's still very difficult to raise capital.
Yeah.
So we have to get into a space where we start to see good business is just good business, and you should fund good business rather than having barriers like race, class, gender, ability. These barriers are starting to impact how people can get funded, and we see it a lot not only with racial barriers, but we see a lot with women entrepreneurs aren't getting a fair shake, and they should. And in my opinion, some of the best entrepreneurs in the world right now are all women. If you look at how they run their companies, lean builds, great decisions, great scaling, know how to talk to investors, stakeholders. A lot of the inspiration I get is from female entrepreneurs in this space. So that will be my call to action.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And do you have any inspirational words for all the leaders out there watching this?
Oh, inspirational words.
It could be a phrase, anything, anything.
um, let me see. For all the listeners, I remember they probably don't listen to all this, but you can kill a revolutionary, but you can't kill the revolution. And I think a lot of people listening to this come from so many different walks of life where they never heard of Fred Hampton. And I think if they start understanding the way Fred Hampton was moving, they'll start seeing the urgency behind why Nipsey Hussle, someone like a Nipsey Hussle, should be more talked about than someone who's just a gamer. And I have a lot of friends who are gamers and YouTube streamers on Twitch or whatever. They're all great. But it's crazy how some of the greatest revolutionaries, and I call it Nipsey Hussle revolution as well as Fred Hampton, these people aren't household names yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my kind of like, I guess, words with everyone listening is look up Nipsey Hussle's life story from when he started from the jump and Fred Hampton's story when he started from the jump, and you'll start to realize what the real mission is and what the real ROI and KPI should be. And that should be around revolution, not on just hidden metrics.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and remarkable leadership. And we close the way we began this interview by acknowledging all the original stewards of the various lands we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so, so much.
With gratitude, brother.